Hello friends. Today in this video, I am going to be finishing the How to Get Away with Murder series and telling the story of The Wild Season 6. Season 6 is the last season of the show, and if you want to watch seasons 1 through 5 before this one, I will link all the videos in the description below. But with that said, let's get it started. Episode 1. Say Goodbye. The season begins with Annalise having a dream of her funeral, and Christopher walks up to her grave and says, "Stay dead" to her. It turns out this was a group exercise for her as she is in rehab now ever since Laurel's disappearance at the end of Season 5. After Laurel disappeared, Annalise went to a bar to drink where she learned from Tegan that Emmett was dead. This caused her to go on a bender and end up in rehab. Tegan has now become the managing partner at Kaplan and Gold ever since Emmett's death, and this causes the police to question her. Even Nate is starting to think that Tegan had something to do with his death because the body is randomly being shipped off to London. We don't know who did it either. In rehab, Annalise reveals to her roommate about Sam's death, hoping to relieve her of some guilt. Elsewhere, Michaela and Gabriel start dating. But then Gabriel's mom, Vivian, arrives in town. Bonnie and Frank officially file a missing persons report for Laurel and Christopher. Frank also finds a key hidden in Christopher's room. Annalise shortly returns home and has the Keating Four do an exercise where they let out of their demons and guilt. Asher reveals to Michaela that Annalise knew her birth mother, which pisses Michaela off, and she wants to kill her. Asher just learned of it recently when he was looking into Annalise because he is thinking about turning on her for immunity with the FBI. The ending flash forward shows a blood-splattered wall and a fireplace. Poker then falls to the ground. Then flash to a funeral, and it is none other than Annalise's. Episode 2. Vivian's here. Vivian has arrived into town, and she goes to meet with Annalise, who doesn't want her there, and then she goes to meet with Gabriel as well. Gabriel is upset with her because she pushed his father out of his life and never allowed them to develop a relationship. Annalise asks Bonnie and Nate to find some dirt on Vivian so they can blackmail her to leave town. Michaela begins a search to find her birth father, but she is sad to learn he died a year earlier. Michaela then does some research on Vivian, and she tells Connor, Oliver, and Asher that she believes Gabriel killed his mother's ex-boyfriend, and then Asher tells this information to Annalise. Annalise then learns Vivian has also been talking with the FBI, so a little later, she goes to tell Vivian that Gabriel killed her ex-boyfriend, hoping to prevent her from talking to the feds anymore. Frank uses the key that he found in the last episode and tries to go use it to unlock a safety deposit box Laurel had, but he's not on the access list. Annalise tells Frank that Wes had access to the box, so Frank makes a fake ID pretending to be Wes. When he finally opens the box, it is empty, and he learns that Laurel cleaned it out 3 days ago. The ending flash forward shows Michaela in police custody, and the police tell her that one of their informants is dead and her fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. Episode 3. Do you think I'm a bad man? Bonnie helps Connor win his first law school case for a little boy to be reunited with his mother after she was deported from ICE. Bonnie does such a good job being second chair. Tegan offers her a job at Kaplan and Gold. Frank does some more research on Laurel, and he checks the security footage of her leaving the bank, and he tracks down the cab driver of the cab she got in afterwards. Frank goes to the address he received, and he runs into Xavier there. Elsewhere, Gabriel does admit to his mother that he killed her boyfriend, Paul, and it was because Paul was abusive towards her and she didn't deserve that. Vivian then gives Gabriel a bunch of therapy recordings of Sam and Annalise when they were first doing sessions and before they got married. On one of the recordings, Annalise says that her first big lawyer of the firm she worked for was Michaela's father, and she says he was a skisball. Gabriel shows this to Michaela. On the tape, it says he was hooking up with one of their clients, which is a big no-no, and even got her pregnant. This causes Michaela to get very upset. Over to the FBI, who is trying to convince Nate to turn on Annalise, and they tell him that they will give up valuable information in regards to details about his father's death if he helps them put Annalise behind bars. Nate still thinks Miller had something to do with his father's death, and maybe even Tegan. The ending flash forward shows Connor being interrogated by the FBI, and they offer him a deal if he talks. They show him a picture of who died, which causes him to hyperventilate, and he falls to the floor. Episode 4. I hate the world. In the flash forward, Connor had just passed out and Michaela screams for him on the other side of the wall. Then back to present day, and Annalise calls the bank and transfers $50,000 to whom we do not know of. Then over to Gabriel, who is still listening to all of the audio tapes, and he is able to make out Michaela's father's name, and it is Solomon Vick. Michaela was raised by adoptive parents because her father left and her mother died when she was 2. She goes into hardcore research mode. After she finds out more on him, Michaela and Gabriel attend a conference that he is speaking at. Right before she is about to try and sneak his DNA, she and Gabriel get in an argument when he says she is being reckless and he goes home. Michaela goes forward with her plan, but is caught by Solomon and the two sit down to share a drink. Annalise goes on a date with Robert, but once it gets going, she starts to believe he is an FBI mole and there to get more information on her. Bonnie and Nate find out that Tegan owns stock in a company that Laurel's family owns, and they begin to wonder if Tegan helped Laurel and Christopher flee from everything going on. They think Laurel knew the FBI was going to come down hard on them, and she wanted to get out before it all happened. The following day, Frank shows up at Bonnie's doorstep covered in blood and barely alive. Episode 5. We're All Gonna Die. This episode begins with Annalise listening to old audio tapes from her and Sam's sessions, and she's getting really in the feels. She then gets a call that Frank is in the hospital. A flashback then shows Frank being confronted by Xavier at the safe house, and Xavier actually asks Frank to help him find Laurel because he needs to speak with her. Frank doesn't want any part of helping Xavier do anything, so Xavier captures him and tortures him. Frank then learns it wasn't Laurel that emptied the safety deposit box. It was Laurel's sister. Back to Michaela, who is talking with Solomon, and Michaela just asks for answers regarding what happened with himself and her mother when Michaela was 2. He says it was just a one-night stand, and it wasn't anything serious, and he had nothing to do with her death. Michaela isn't buying it, and she asks him for money since he hasn't given her anything over the years, and he gives her a blank check. Over to Asher, who is paid a visit from his sister, Chloe, who wants Asher to come talk to their mother because she isn't doing too well mentally. She also tells him the crew he is hanging out with now is bad news bears, which is true if we're being honest. Annalise talks with Gabriel, and she apologizes for causing a rift between his parents. But she did love Sam and wanted to be with him. At the hospital, Frank finally wakes up and he tells Bonnie that Annalise helped Laurel disappear, and he learned this information while he was being tortured by Xavier. She fled to get away from Xavier and the FBI. When they ask Annalise about this, she denies it, and when she calls the bank to check the account she sent money to, it is empty. The flash forward shows Tegan arriving at Asher and Gabe's apartment building, and she is there for her client. A large amount of blood is then shown on the floor. Episode 6. Family sucks. Annalise is through trying to please everybody, and she knows the Castillos are the real enemy, so she files a restraining order against the whole family. She feels Xavier is going to come after her now, thinking she helped Laurel leave. The court grants her the restraining order. She even gets a new passport. Solomon continues to try and get closer with Michaela, but she just pushes him away because he wasn't a part of her life for 20 years. Why all of a sudden does he want to be Father of the Year? Bonnie is fired from Kaplan and Gold when Tegan finds out that Bonnie was working with Nate in hopes of finding out information whether or not Tegan is working with the Castillos or not. They still don't know who killed Emmett, but they're pretty sure it was a Castillo hit. Bonnie and Connor bond throughout the episode when he learns that Connor was accepted into the Keating 5 because of her, and she wanted him to be a part of the group. Frank talks with Bonnie and tries to convince her to run away with him to Oregon, but she says she won't do that to Annalise. Asher does go home and spends time with his mother and sister, but then they get into a fight at dinner over his father's death and he leaves. When he got back home, he was angry and vented to Michaela, and then they hooked up. Apparently, Michaela and Gabriel are still fighting because of the Solomon fiasco. The ending flash forward shows Asher arriving at Bonnie's house with blood all of his graduation gown. Episode 7. I'm the Murderer. Annalise is still dating Robert for the time being, and she thinks he is a good guy and not an FBI mole as she previously thought. She is still scared for her life, thinking the Castillos will come take her out at any time, and she even gets freaked out when some random lady shows up at her door. The lady was just lost though. She tells the Keating 4 to set up cameras in their home for their safety. Tegan finally convinces Nate to go forward with the wrongful death suit of his father, but Annalise doesn't want them to go through with it because that will just put a larger target on their back with the Castillos. A wrongful death suit would expose their whole family, so Annalise has Frank threaten Tegan's wife, so Tegan will drop out of the case. She resigns from being Nate's lawyer. Michaela breaks up with Gabriel officially to focus on her last year of law school, and she tells Asher their hookup was a one-time thing. When the two find out about each other, they get into a physical altercation. Bonnie then tells Nate that she will be his attorney in the wrongful death suit since Tegan backed out of it. The governor gets wind of this, and she tells Xavier to dig up any information she can on Bonnie to make sure this case doesn't go forward. She's afraid of being exposed since she knew about Nate Sr.'s death. We then learn the lady at Annalise's door earlier was actually a mole, and she's working with Xavier, trying to figure out her habits at home and when to strike. Connor vents to Oliver, and he admits to Oliver that he was the one that chopped up Sam's body after he was dead, and he's been holding it in all this time. Then we see the ending flash forward, and it is Oliver at the police station. Frank tries to get Oliver to leave, but then Oliver yells to the police that he is the murderer. Episode 8. I Want to Be Free. Annalise gives her class their final exams, and it will be 10 minutes arguing a case against her. The winner will receive an A and 64 grand. Then jump a week earlier and Nate Sr.'s wrongful death suit is set to begin, and the governor tells the world she is innocent of anything they accuse her of. Annalise tries stopping Bonnie from going forward with this, but she says it is something she has to do. For Nate, Annalise does some dirty work and secretly sends in some information to the court that presents Bonnie as a conflict of interest because she was dating Miller, and Bonnie is kicked off the case. Tegan then takes over after thinking more. The governor is called to the stand first, and the governor implicates one of her aides into the one behind everything. She says she had no idea what was going on, but she has since fired this person. We all know it was really her though, and she's trying to save her booty. Annalise then tells Tegan to call Bonnie to the stand. Bonnie then tells the court that she got her information from Gladden, one of the prison guards. Gladden will testify the following day. When Bonnie is going home after court, someone cut the brake lines in her vehicle and she is in an accident. Frank then finds Gladden and orders her to tell the truth on the stand and not lie, or else he will do something drastic. He doesn't want Gladden lying for the governor. When Gladden takes the stand, she tells the court that Xavier Castillo ordered the hit along with the governor. Nate wins the case and is awarded $10 million in a settlement. He still has his eyes on bringing down the governor for her criminal mischief. A week later, Asher wins the final exam and wins the prize money. The episode closes with Annalise at her apartment talking to a mysterious person who is instructing her how to erase her hard drive and leave her apartment undetected. Episode 9. Are You the Mole? Everyone goes out partying after final exams, but when the students get home, Michaela receives a mysterious phone call. It is Laurel, and she tells them that she is not an FBI mole and she's living her life with her son, and Tegan helped her get away. She's fine and left on her own accord. We then flash back to 12 hours earlier where Annalise is saying goodbye to all her final year law school students. To party, Oliver gets him, Asher, Connor, and Michaela to do mushrooms together. Annalise goes with Tegan to a holiday party. News then breaks that the FBI has an anonymous source that is leading them to Annalise for all of her criminal wrongdoing. Gabriel tells Frank he swears it isn't him. Annalise then packs up and leaves town under a new identity. Then jump back to the present day where Laurel tells Michaela that she is fine and not the mole. Michaela then realizes the mole has got to be Asher because he isn't high like everyone else and isn't pointing any fingers. Asher confesses to it, but only because the FBI threatened to put his mother in prison for his father's death, and Asher didn't want that to happen. Asher tells them that the only way they all get out is if they turn on Annalise. He then leaves and goes to Bonnie's house and tells her, who then calls Frank. A few hours later, Asher is shown dead in his apartment hallway and was beaten over the head. The police then arrest Connor and Michaela in connection to Asher's death. The episode closes at Annalise's funeral once again, and Wes shows up. Isn't he supposed to be dead? Episode 10. We're not getting away with it. Annalise has fled to the streets of Mexico to live her new life. Connor and Michaela are booked for Asher's murder, but then Oliver shows up and confesses to the murder, and he is booked as well. Bonnie is out of the hospital and she goes to Tegan because she thinks Tegan helped Annalise flee just like she did with Laurel, but Tegan swears she didn't. She has no idea where Annalise is. Gabriel is brought in to be questioned by the FBI as well in regards to Asher's murder, but he denies even being anywhere around Asher the night prior. We then get a flashback where Asher was at Bonnie's house secretly recording their conversation, and he tried to get Bonnie and Frank to incriminate themselves and Annalise on tape, but it didn't work and he left. He then broke his phone and actually did meet up with Gabriel, where he bought Gabriel's phone from him for the 64 grand he won in class. So Gabriel lied to the FBI and said he didn't see him at all. Back to the bail hearing where Michaela and Connor are denied bail, but the charges against Oliver are dropped because they have no evidence or motive for Oliver to kill Asher. They think Michaela and Connor did it because they were jealous he won the 64 grand check during their final exam, but really, they needed a reason to bring Michaela and Connor in. A little later, the FBI offers Michaela and Connor full immunity deals if they testify against Annalise. They agree to the deal as long as the other gets to go free as well. Then we go back down to Annalise, who meets up with a mysterious person in Mexico who is supposed to take her to her next destination, but Annalise backs out at the last minute. A little later, she is picked up the Mexican police and arrested. Episode 11. The Reckoning. Annalise was arrested and charged with passport fraud because she was using a fake passport that didn't contain her real identity. She is then sent back to the US and put on house arrest in Tennessee with her mother. Michaela, Connor, and Oliver hear about this in Philly and are scared what Annalise will think when she finds out they are turning against her because she's had their backs so many times. Annalise has yet to actually kill anyone. She's been protecting everyone in her circle this entire time. Annalise soon learns of this and she is not happy, but she is able to get the AUSA to drop the charges against her passport fraud when she informs them about the restraining order she had and why she had to use a different identity. Gabriel decides to tell the FBI the truth, and he shows them the check and the phone Asher used when he saw him last night, but swears he didn't kill him. He just knew how it looked. Annalise invites the Keating Four over, and she tells them if they turn on her, she's going to turn on them too, and she knows every dirty little secret they have. Bonnie and Frank agree to stick next to Annalise's side through it all. Flashbacks reveal that the night of Asher's murder, he recorded a message for Connor and Michaela, but then someone knocked on his door. It was a woman that worked for the Castillos as a mole. Gabriel heard commotion and peeked under the door and witnessed him die. He didn't see the lady's full face though, and he assumed it was Laurel. Gabriel then tells this to Lanford. Asher's point person with the FBI then walks into the room, Agent Pollock, and Gabriel recognizes her as the one that killed Asher. But he holds it in for now. He then goes to tell the others that the FBI killed Asher, and he doesn't know if Lanford is aware they have a dirty agent or not. Episode 12. Let's hurt him. The others tell Gabriel that they don't believe him and that theory is wild. The FBI would never have a dirty murdering mole. They tell him to leave. The court case for Annalise is about to get underway and Tegan is going to represent her against all of the wild accusations. The AUSA tells the court they plan on pursuing the death penalty. Gabriel tells Vivian what he saw happen, and then Vivian goes to tell this to Annalise. Annalise then has Frank follow Agent Pollock to see if he can find any more information to use against her. He tails her and finds Xavier and kidnaps him when he realizes Xavier was about to leave the country. Annalise meets with the press to tell the public that she is innocent, and they need to be looking hard into the justice system and for any dirty feds. Annalise offers Nate to meet with Xavier face to face if he will testify in her favor. Nate agrees and talks with him, and Xavier says it was all Governor Burkhead, and he was just following orders. Xavier tries pleading with Nate to let him live, but Nate isn't about that life, and he kills Xavier. Michaela and Connor meet with Annalise to apologize for going against her, and they are done doing that, and they also now know Pollock was Asher's true killer. Pollock was coercing them to do her dirty work for them, and they had no idea. At the hearing, Annalise plays the recording to the court, and the committee throws out the death penalty. The episode closes with Vivian asking Annalise why the government is so set on bringing her down, and Annalise thinks it is all Hannah Keating trying to get even for Sam's death. Episode 13. What if Sam wasn't the bad guy this whole time? Nate tells Frank not to do anything with Xavier's body, and he has a plan. Nate then goes to Lanford and tells him that Pollock is a dirty agent. Over to Vivian and Annalise, and Vivian tells Annalise that she believes Sam and Hannah had an intimate relationship behind the scenes. She even says her and Sam were hooking up for a little bit when he was married to Annalise, and Sam is just not a good dude. But we've known this. Annalise then goes to Tegan and asks her to look into Hannah because Annalise thinks this is all Hannah trying to take her down because no one was found guilty of Sam's death. Tegan finds out that Hannah was pregnant her senior year of high school, but couldn't find anything that would support Hannah and Sam having a sister-brother sexual relationship with each other. Vivian convinces Gabriel that he needs to move out of Philadelphia and start off new because he needs a fresh start. The FBI still offers Connor and Michaela immunity deals, and Michaela says no, but Connor signs it behind their backs. He's looking out for him and Oliver. A little bit later, Lanford looks into the claims that Pollock is dirty, and he is able to uncover that she is a dirty cop and she actually works for the Castillos on the side. She is their inside man, or inside woman, I guess. Tegan looks more into the Sam-Hannah intimate relationship, and she tests Frank's DNA to see if it matches with Sam's because the pregnancy and his birthday lines up. When the tests come back, it is shown that Frank is actually Sam and Hannah's son. Episode 14. Annelise Keating is dead. Annalise's trial starts, and boy, is it a wild one. A USA Linux requests that Tegan be removed as Annalise's counsel because there is a conflict of interest as Laurel will now be testifying. And since Tegan is the Castillo's old lawyer, she can't fairly represent Annalise too. Annalise then says she will be her own counsel. Bonnie convinced Hannah to testify at the request of Annalise, and Hannah says yes because she's the one that wants to see Annalise go down for Sam's murder. Nate goes to Jorge Castillo in prison and tells him he should testify against the governor. Michaela takes the stand at the trial, and she lies and tells the court that Annalise ordered Wes to kill Sam because they were sleeping together. Connor then gets on the stand and corroborates this. They're all turning against her. Frank begs Laurel not to testify, but Laurel is set on doing it. Laurel then gets on the stand and she says that Lanford told her to get on the stand and say certain stuff so they could all go free and Annalise go down. He also did this with Michaela and Connor for immunity deals. Crooked cops man. Nate then plants Xavier's body in a place to make it look like the governor had him killed, and then Nate goes to Jorge hoping this will convince him to testify against her. The episode ends with Hannah being found dead after she did it to herself when Bonnie told Frank about Sam and Hannah being his parents. She couldn't live with Frank knowing the truth. Episode 15. Stay. Series finale. The finale opens with gunshots being heard outside of the courthouse. Then we flash back to the night before when Annalise and Tegan found out Hannah was dead. The next day at the trial, Jorge listens to Frank's advice and takes the stand. He says he never worked with the governor, and he had no idea his son was doing it either. The governor then takes the stand and Annalise plays a recording for the court that shows Hannah and Xavier discussing the governor's role in Nate Sr.'s death and how she approved it to go down. She still denies it, saying they were talking hogwash and trying to take her down. She's never done anything criminal, and then Annalise says she is done questioning her. Nate meets with the FBI, and they offer him $20 million to testify against Annalise and grill her on the stand. Nate then takes the stand a little later, and he calls out the FBI for trying to bribe him. He also says Hannah Keating is responsible for everything that's happened, and that's why she ended it the day before. She couldn't live with it and knew the truth was about to be exposed. Annalise thanks him for not taking the money, and he said he didn't do it for her. He did it to clear his conscience. After closing arguments for the case, Annalise is found not guilty. Outside the courtroom, Frank appears with a stone-cold face and Bonnie knows he is about to do something drastic after finding out the truth about his parents and why his mother eliminated herself, and it was because the governor. Frank shoots the governor and Bonnie tries stopping him, and she is shot and killed by the guards along with Frank. The governor dies as well. Then we get the final flash forward that we've seen bits of at Annalise's funeral, and it is in the distant future. She wasn't murdered as we were led to believe. And it wasn't Wes walking around at her funeral, it was Christopher, Wes, and Laurel's son. Everyone is there to remember what Annalise meant to them and celebrate her life. Christopher is now a law professor at Middleton just like Annalise was. And that is it for How to Get Away with Murder. 6 seasons done, and I am hoping you enjoyed the series and are able to check out some others that I upload in the future. Thanks for watching.